If you noticed you've pulled a muscle during your workout, the best thing to do is stop, apply something cool to the area, and take a few days out. That's only sensible, right? Well, it seems not everybody thinks the same way. Some people think it's okay to carry on through the pain, often at the expense of their muscles. We've put together a list of 10 bodybuilders who have done just that, and now they're paying the price. Instead of pushing your arm and leg muscles to the extreme, try stretching your brain. What's the best way to do this? Click subscribe before we start and we'll teach you all about muscles instead of letting you harm them. Edouard Spyk Gheur. Some may consider him nothing more than determined, but bodybuilder Edouard Spyk Gheur grew his muscles until they, well, exploded. And not just a casual arm or leg muscle. Nope, his heart exploded. Although he was relatively well known for having huge muscles before the incident, he's even better known nowadays for taking it too far and facing the facts when it came to steroid use. Edouard loved supplements, and that's a fact. The bodybuilder took them for around 15 years before noticing major side effects, and considered it all worthwhile to help him achieve his dream body. However, during his training, he would often find he suffered mood swings and soon developed acne. But this was nothing compared to what was yet to come. Edouard's aorta completely split, and we nearly saw the end of him there and then. He claims he was training and suddenly it felt like a knife had gone into his heart. He collapsed and woke up in a hospital, where luckily, he was nursed back to health. The paramedics told him he was lucky that he didn't need to have both legs amputated, and even though his heart had technically exploded, he managed to regain use of his body after a few years. Eric Graves. This bodybuilder probably just thought he was pushing a little bit too hard when his muscle exploded. It was during a normal workout, and the Texan bodybuilder was training as usual. Then, just as he tried to lift 500 pounds on the bench press, he felt a pop. Eric was shocked. What had happened? It turned out his chest had given way, and his right pectoral muscle had simply exploded from too much pressure. Whether it was due to not training sufficiently beforehand, or maybe just his muscles were overworked and tired from a previous day's training, we'll never know. Eric wasn't an especially well-known bodybuilder, but that's changed since, although not for good reasons. His accident has served to show bodybuilders in training just how easy it is to injure yourself if you work out too hard and too fast. Obviously, after injuring himself to such an extent, Eric had to take the back seat in the lifting world and served as little more than a spectator for a while. The stitches he received had been viewed all around the world on social media, and we're pretty sure it served its purpose of teaching wannabe lifters how to lift carefully and safely. Hopefully one day Eric will be back in the game, albeit with some slower training techniques first. We are very excited to announce the Premium Network. The Premium gets you early access to videos from The Richest, Screen Rant, The Taco, The Sportster, The Things, and many other great channels. Literally thousands of videos in one place with ad-free browsing. Check out the Premium by clicking this link. Sign up for free and start binge watching videos from your favorite channels. Alexander Fedorov. He was considered to be the next big thing in bodybuilding before it all went wrong for lifter Alexander Fedorov. The Russian 35-year-old had competed all over Europe to build up his muscle in order to become the best of the best before, unfortunately, his muscle exploded. Predictably, it was all downhill from here for Alexander. We're not surprised he was training pretty hard at the time when he tore his pectoral muscle because he'd been trying to place at the Mr. Olympia contests. He worked hard to place in various Russian contests and had done so successfully twice in 2003. Unfortunately, it was during this year when he tore a muscle during a workout. He kept doing his best to overcome it, but the damaged muscle held him back to the extent he had to give up lifting for a while. After trying to push through the pain for 3 years, he was forced to take early retirement from the sport in 2006. Now, we know many bodybuilders have had a short lifting career, but this lifter had an especially short one. You can't help but feel sorry for Alexander. However, despite the pain and pressure he's gone through so far, he continues to be optimistic and says he's keeping his eye on the prize forever. Branch Warren. Although he's obviously one of the best bodybuilders around at the moment, Branch Warren has often been criticized for having a bad form and not lifting properly. We don't want to point out his mistakes too much because, after all, he's got this far in his career, but we do wonder if perhaps the injuries he's faced could have been prevented with some lifting education. Branch is known for being able to lift heavy, but his body seems to swing a lot when he does so, and according to other experts, his range of motion is really short too. It's thought that his training methods aren't the most suitable to those who want to achieve heavy gains, and Branch certainly paid the price for trying to use his own methods alone. During one heavy training session, Branch tore one of his quad tendons. Doctors rushed to the scene and told the lifter he would likely make a full recovery, but that he would first have to take some time out and let his muscles fully repair. This meant that he was unable to compete in the 2011 contest, but fully able to take part in the 2012 Arnold Classic. Luckily, he's fully healed now. Ron Noreman. Unlike many bodybuilders, Ron Noreman wasn't blessed with incredible genetics. This meant that, although he's definitely an amazing lifter, he isn't quite at the top of the game. This was possibly thought to be the reason as to why he sustained so many injuries while training at the sport. First, Ron complained of a bad hip. He would limp through workouts and complain about the pain while lifting, but powered through. Soon he developed a full-time limp, and eventually had to have surgery after it was discovered that he had barely any cartilage left in one of his hips. Luckily, the surgery meant he could continue lifting like he did before. But this wasn't the end of Ron's lifting injuries. The worst was yet to come. While training legs one day, Ron suffered double complete quad ruptures. This left him unable to walk, and we dread to think of how he got help as he was training alone at the time. Even before he started working out that day, he knew he would be pushing the limits with what he was capable of lifting, but he still took the risk. It didn't pay off, and both quads had to be surgically reattached. Doctors thought he might never walk properly again, but Ron persevered. Andrey Gatos. Whereas some of our lifters on this list have been lucky enough to learn from their mistakes, not all of them can say the same. Andrey Gatos is an example of one lifter who was so determined to be the best of the best that he isn't with us today. And the worst part, it was so easily preventable. Andrej was only 19 when he collapsed outside a supermarket after a heavy day of training. The teenager, who was just over 7 feet tall, was determined to be the next Rock and devoted a huge amount of time to working out and improving his physique. Sadly, he wasn't satisfied with natural gains and took to steroids to help him along the way artificially. Although the steroids weren't necessarily identified as the reason for Andrej's passing, the coroner in charge of the case said there was a pretty strong correlation. It turned out that Andrej had been taking steroids for a while, and the aorta in his heart had ruptured. Apparently, he also had a disorder called acromegaly, which is caused by excess growth hormones, but this was never officially confirmed. Either way, the steroids likely helped this bodybuilder along the way, but not how he would have wanted. Gregg Valentine. Some people call him a freak, but that might just be jealousy. Either way, Gregg Valentine is a pretty impressive bodybuilder and is known for having the biggest arms in the world. But at what cost? Gregg says the reason he got into weightlifting was because he felt small. The builder says he is 5 feet 6 inches on a good day. He's not the tallest bodybuilder around, so he decided that if he couldn't grow vertically, he would grow horizontally and increase his muscles instead. And for a while, at least, it worked. He always had big arms to start with, and claims they were around 18 inches wide before he even started lifting. But then he started using synthol, and that's where it all went wrong for Gregg. After inserting far too much of the chemical into his arms, one of them became infected and swelled up, but not in the way he was reaching for. In desperation, he tried to draw out the pus from his arms himself by poking his skin with various tools. Eventually, he drew some of it out, but at the expense of his muscles. He ended up in hospital after his muscles couldn't take the pressure any longer. Romario dos Santos Alves. At what point do you think it's time to give up lifting? Maybe when your arms get infected, or maybe just at the point before they get amputated from synthol use. The latter was the point when bodybuilder Romario dos Santos Alves decided it was time to quit the chemicals and get his life back on track. He had spent a long time injecting a cocktail of oil and chemicals into his arms before they grew too hard. Famously, he couldn't inject anything more because his arms had turned into almost literal rocks. They were too hard to cut into, so Romario had to become inventive. But predictably enough, after enough abuse, his body was ready to give up on him. He'd become a monster, and kids in the local neighborhood would run away when they saw him. More importantly than looks, though, was his health. Romario was nearing the end, and his muscles couldn't take much more. He ended up hospitalized and almost suffered kidney failure, along with multiple broken muscles. Since the trauma, Romario was careful to stay away from synthol, but claims he's still occasionally tempted by the supplements. He still wants to be a successful bodybuilder, even though the surgery he undertook has left him with some pretty strange-looking arms. Arlindo de Souza. He's been nicknamed Popeye, and not because of a love for leafy green vegetables. Instead, bodybuilder Arlindo de Souza has spent so much time using synthetic chemicals to build up his muscles that his appearance is verging on one of our old favorite characters. Arlindo has 29-inch biceps, which are the biggest in his country of Brazil. But sadly, they're not natural. More so than that, they don't even look natural, and he hasn't toned the rest of his body to match. He's been injecting for 2 years now and is scared of the consequences. Already, he's suffered a few issues and his arms have nearly burst. It's obvious that his muscles are reaching breaking point and screaming out for Arlindo to stop punishing them with chemicals. But the lifter says it's too late now. Doctors have apparently refused to help him because the injury is self-inflicted. So if Arlindo's muscles decide to tear entirely, he'll be stuck in a position that nobody wants to face. The pain he's currently facing because of such stretched muscles was enough to force Arlindo to visit a few clinics, but without any success. His taut muscles are nearly at breaking point, and despite the damage already, it looks like he's not going to fix them anytime soon. Scott Mendelson. This lifter nearly broke a record for his strength, but was it really worth it for Scott Mendelson? His fans might say yes, but his ripped pectoral muscle would probably think otherwise. Scott had been working out as usual, and was training up for the 2013 Southern Powerlifting Federation meet. After finishing his standard few exercises, he moved over to the bench press machine. Here was where Scott's lifting career was about to take a turn for the worse. He was trying his best to beat his record and set the bar pretty low in comparison. It wasn't like he was reaching for the stars, as he was only trying to gain an extra pound on his already impressive feats. But this 1 pound made all the difference. Reaching up, he grabbed hold for the 716-pound bar, and did his best to carry it. Midway through pressing the weight, his pectoral muscle visibly started to turn red very quickly. Most of his torso also turned red, which was when Scott truly realized it was time to panic and do something about the injury. The exploded muscle forced him to sit out for a while and let it heal, and heal it did, albeit very slowly. But with damage that extensive, we're not too surprised. Now, we've taught you all about these lifters who took their favorite sport too far. We hope you'll remember to work out sensibly in the future. Hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to subscribe to TheHUB to learn all about your other favorite subjects.